Good morning, members, officers, and any members of the public in the public gallery or viewing online. Welcome to the meeting of the Employment Staffing Committee. My name is Councillor Will Jackson-Wood, and I'm chairing this meeting. My vice chair is Sally Ann Hart, sitting to my left. I'll introduce other attendees when I invite them to speak. Just a quick reminder that this is being live streamed, so do be aware that anything that's on your laptop or on your phone could be made, could be seen at any point. So just a quick point on that. And also, please do switch on your mic and just give a couple of seconds for it to actually switch on before you start to speak. Thank you very much. Sorry for the slight late running as well. We had a slight technical hitch, but we're all online now, which is good. Okay, so item number one is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Thank you very much, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Richard Stobart and Councillor Sunita Hansraj. Councillor Ariel Khan is attending in her absence.
Super, thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest at all? No? Okay, if any interests do become apparent later in the meeting, if you just make it aware, that would be great. So item number 3 is minutes of the previous meeting. Do members have any suggested amendments relating to the accuracy of the minutes from the meeting held on the 24th of June? No? Okay. So we can approve the minutes as true and accurate record by affirmation. Item number 4, I believe there's been no public questions that have been received.
That's correct, yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's great, thank you very much. So, item number 5, the people recruitment, retention, absence data from the first days, I believe, who's actually going to present the report? Josh, super, okay.
Thank you. So to provide a brief overview of the report, for quarter 1 of 25-26, there was a significant increase in the number of applications per externally advertised role compared to quarter 3 and quarter 4 last year. During this quarter, 41 roles were advertised externally and 39 successful offers were made. In terms of turnover, there were 12 voluntary leavers in quarter 1, 6 of which completed the leaver questionnaire. Our post-induction survey had 21 respondents out of 31 new starters, with 20 rating their induction as good or excellent. I'd like to draw members' attention to 10A of that section, where it says 20 respondents rated their induction as good, in brackets 2, or excellent 3. The figures are actually good, in brackets 4, and excellent, brackets 16. The sickness levels within the shared waste service decreased compared to quarter 4. Days lost per FTE due to long-term absence has also decreased by almost half compared to the same quarter in the previous year. In quarter 1, we also saw a decrease in percentage of days lost as a whole organisation compared to the same quarter in the previous year by 1.93%. The people team continues to support line managers with the sickness absence management. This includes physiotherapy, and we also put in preventative measures such as educational pieces throughout the months. Thank you.
Thanks, Joshua. Do you have any questions from any members at all? Yes, Heather, please.
Thank you. So just a couple of things. I just wanted to I was trying to get the figures, as you said, in the correction of the brackets. You went a little too quick for me because I was still trying to find what part you were referring to. So can I just have those figures again before I ask my other questions? Is that okay, Chair?
Indeed, yeah.
Yep. So it was good brackets 4. There was 4 people. Section part 10, part A. Yeah.
Page 12. Yeah.
It was good 4 people, and then excellent was 16 people.
Thank you. That's quite a difference to the numbers. So yes, very, very important. So I have on page 8. I found this really useful information to have that detail around advertisement of roles, and I guess it kind of relates to the graph on page 11, chart 4, But that's just externally, obviously. So I think it's really good as well that we can see how actually, I know places like the contact centre are great feeding grounds to then move people around the organisation. So it's really good to see both sides of the coin here. I do wonder though, it's quite hard to digest in the format that it is in that sort of table. And I wonder whether it'd be possible to have a graph not only for the sort of external, but for here, if that makes sense. I think you do need the raw data, that is important, but for to digest, particularly if we could have it done so each quarter is above the other, if that makes sense, then you can do quarter for quarter comparisons, because I was sort of comparing quarter one with quarter ones of previous years and that sort of thing. So just wondering whether there's a different way of presenting that would make it more digestible. Equally on that basis, when it comes to some of the graphs, we can see we've kind of got the average to take out seasonal variances and we don't on others. And I think that would be very helpful. I think particularly on things like voluntary turnover on page 12, chart 5, it's got a lot of spikes, and that makes it quite a hard assessment. When we bear in mind this also for people in the public domain to be able to digest. So whether it's possible to try and take out peaks by just giving it sort of an average, because you add them all together divided by 12, then you'll see the steady trend, as well as the sort of different peaks, and you could have that for each year. Again, then you'll be able to compare sort of quarters by quarters a bit easier. So they were just a couple of notes on how we can hope to improve reports. On page 12, actually what you're referring to is just above 8 on the voluntary leavers. 50%, I do appreciate at some point I think it was lower than that of people giving their sort of exit interviews. But is there any other work we could do? Because 50% is still only half, to try and encourage people, if they're leaving the organisation, to take part in the leaver questionnaire. Because I think it is really important when we're looking at recruitment in the future to understand why people are leaving. And I think we have got it higher in the past than 50%. So is there any measures that have been taken to deal with that? On 10B, there was a word in it which always triggers a little bit of concern for me. It says, this is assumed as a comparative to them working a 5-day week in their previous employment. Now, a lot of people that are starting here, and we can see that from other parts of the report, are people's sort of first jobs, and we have apprenticeships. So I think there is a way of us being able to ascertain whether this is in comparison, even if the question is, we ask the question, are you comparing this to employment you've experienced 5 days a week? Because I think it is wrong for us to sort of be making decisions on such assumptions. There are some things, when you're looking into the future for budgeting, you have no choice but to make assumptions about markets, etc. But this is something that we could ascertain and be more accurate on. And then on page 15, my last one, Chair, for this item, we have in relation to sickness, and we have sort of with and without the crews and the waste crews. I still feel that, in my mind at least, there is confusion about the non-working day, whether people are meant to report if they're absent and how that's calculated, because we need to really see like-for-like comparisons. So I think a decision even needs to be made that if you're feeling unwell on your non-working day, you need to report it, or you don't, and we accept that that doesn't happen. Because when I've previously raised the question, it's been if you're off for a week, it'll be recorded as sort of like the week, so technically including your non-working day. If it's just a day, then it's not. So where are we at on that? Because it does feel like that's been, definitely when I've spoken to people in the council and asked questions here, there seems to be a lot of confusion as to whether or not that is done. For example, get signed off for 6 weeks, how is that dealt with? Are we only putting 4 through? Because again, it depends if they're doing a 5-day week. If they're not, some people, as we can see later on, are doing reduced hours over 5 days. So they would, if they're not in, they would be recording, whereas other people wouldn't. So it just feels very inconsistent there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Can I just check, actually, do you have any questions within that? Or was it more kind of like, because I want to make sure that we're responding accordingly.
What, within everything I've said?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
highlighted. One was, could we look at the way things are styled? The other one is what is being done to ensure we get more than 50% of the leavers. That was referenced. Can something be done to remove the assumption that is made? And what is the situation with a non-working day?
Okay. Thank you. What would be really handy, because I actually got a little bit confused there as well, so it'd be quite good if we just maybe reduce the amount of questions in each sort of segment, as it were, just to allow for a response. But with that in mind, would somebody like to respond?
Yes, I'm happy to respond. Yes, in terms of the presentation, yeah, there was some really good suggestions there. We'll make some amendments, bring some alternatives to the next committee, so that'd be useful to get some feedback. We're very happy to look at whether there's best practice out there to encourage people to complete their leavers forms. So we'll certainly do that, and ensure that the correct procedure, which is people should be reporting the full extent of their sickness, even if it's not working days. I'll certainly ensure that more communication goes out about that, so that if there's uncertainty, it removes any uncertainty.
Councillor Williams?
Yes, thank you. Particularly on that last point, I didn't quite get an answer on the assumption basis. But on that last point, I know definitely of members of staff that are not aware that they need to let you know if they're ill on their non-working day. So perhaps as well, if we can see those communications so we know exactly what's going out, and then we are being consistent as well as councillors. But yes, is there a way to change the questionnaire to remove an assumption?
Yes, we'll have a look at whether we can add something to the questionnaire. So, it's, as you say, it's relatively straightforward. I don't see that as being a problem.
Thank you.
Super, thank you. Councillor John Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. And just a couple of observations, really. I've been doing a lot of work with Local Government Association with regard to helping councils with their finances, and obviously I've come into contact with a lot of district councils. And I have to say that we are certainly bucking the trend in terms of recruitment and the number of applicants. Many district councils now find it extremely difficult to get applicants because of local government reorganisation and having to take on, as a result, agency staff, obviously, which is increasing their costs enormously. And we're bucking that trend. And so clearly, the 4-day week is having an impact here. And secondly, on that, regarding sick days, I mean, the methodology hasn't changed. I know we've had lots of discussions here with regard to how we report on people who are colleagues who are sick on their non-working day, but nevertheless, we have now had 4-day week here nearly 3 years. It was introduced for office-based staff in January 2022, and it's really interesting how we've improved the number of sick days, how sick days has significantly gone down during the period of the 4-day week. It's undeniable, using the same methodology, that regardless of whether it includes non-working days or not, we have seen a significant reduction in sick days. And so again, that's clearly has to be down to the 4-day week. There has been no other change in factors over the past 3 years that would suggest otherwise.
Thank you very much. But anyone, let's comment back on that, or was it just very, okay, I didn't think so. Thank you, great. Okay, Councillor Alan Bradman, please.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Heather Williams about the table, the chart. I mean, it's useful to always I prefer to see the raw data. But this is quite a hard presentation, so if there's a way that we can make that a bit more comparable between quarters, that would be great. the other was just a comment really, and that's on 10C. You know, it's really gratifying to know that we are assigning buddies to new recruits, and particularly that these are buddies from other departments. It's not until the end it says, one of the buddies said they reported it being nice to meet someone in a different department and having the option to approach them if needed. And I think that's actually really important to get support across the organisation, and quite a genius idea in a way, because it actually helps people to understand what's going on in other departments as well. And as the chair said, you know, we know that recruitment to the contact centre is often a route into working for the council on a different capacity, and that's great for those other departments. Slightly trickier for the contact centre, but it means that our staff are really experienced and now know about what's going on over more than just the department they're working in, which I think is to be is creditable and useful and good for the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay, that's right. Councillor Sally-Ann Hart.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report, which lots of thanks. Thank you for having the table with all the headings on pages. So I'm much more a table person than a graph person. I like looking at those numbers, so I found that really, really helpful. Yeah, a couple of things. I just going back to what we were talking about, the leaving questionnaire. Is that done face to face, or is that done remotely?
So it's done on a Microsoft Forms, but there is an offer for them to have a meeting with their department's people partner to talk through it as well.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that sort of face-to-face thing might mean that we get more of a response, because in my experience, when people have left, they've moved on and they may not go back to do a questionnaire. So I'm just, and bearing in mind the low number of leavers we have, you know, I mean, if there were lots of people going, I realise it would take a lot of time. So I'm just wondering if that could be sort of pushed a little bit more. And then that links to my other question really, which is that it's great to see the average number of applications, the numbers there. And I think there's a point later on that talks about managers. I'm just thinking about managers and team leaders sifting through those applications, and how this links to our next, I think, agenda item about the equality and diversity and those applications being blind. Just what support is there for managers and team leaders when they've got, I'm imagining this hefty pile of applications to look at?
So because we've had such a high number of applications, we're currently looking at ways that we can support managers better to go through those. So it's something we're looking into already.
Lovely, that's really reassuring. Thank you, Josh.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Heather Williams, please.
Thank you. Just some things that might be helpful to bear in mind, and comments, you know, as we've discussed the report. Sickness doesn't have to be because of the 4-day week. I think that's an assumption. There are other things happening. For example, we know that after COVID, there was a lot of issues with people getting treatment and catch-ups, and there has been improvement there. So I think what would be very useful to see is that sort of long-term, short-term, if you want to make that sort of judgment, seeing where that is. Because if you have somebody that's been on long-term sick that suddenly isn't, that can then very dramatically change your figures. And I do think actually how is reporting is important to have those comparisons, because if you no longer are reporting on your non-working day, well then you would expect at least 20% of sick it to drop by 20% since before the 4-day week, because the workforce isn't, you know, working 20% more. So I do think that is really important before any assessment can be made as to whether it's impacting sickness or not. And I would just err a line of caution that there's no silver bullet to recruitment, because although you may have more applicants, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting the quality that you need. And I won't, you know, for HR purposes, I won't refer to the post, but, you know, we have recently had it where there was only one applicant that was worthy of interview. So it's not a silver bullet by any means. We still need to have the quality of the applicants, and there are a lot of people that are actually put off from coming to this council because of it. So, you know, air of caution there. If we're only able to interview one person, it doesn't matter if you've had 2 applications or 100, it's still not doing the job.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Jeff, would anybody like to respond to that comment or not? Yeah.
I think in terms of, we would agree that there are many causes for sickness, and that you get seasonal variations, you get pandemics, you get all sorts of things. As officers, what we can do is present the figures, and members will need to interpret them, and no doubt different members will have different interpretations. In terms of, sorry, what was the second question?
Number of applications and interview.
I was making
Oh, yeah, sorry.
my opinion
and
on.
agree, yeah, that's fine. The other point, agree that there is no single one thing that resolves all recruitment issues. We've got a battery of policies in place that look to address officer wellbeing, to make it a welcoming and supportive place to work. We're also, I think, very active in ensuring that people see the opportunities that they get when they come and work here. I mean, some of the successes of our planning department, for example, where they've won Planning Department of the Year, that sort of thing where that's advertised and out there is also an important way of attracting people, particularly those with the skills that are sometimes a bit limited in the community. So yes, there's a number of things that we need to continue to do to ensure that we are an attractive employer. The 4-day week's just one of those things.
Great, thank you very much, Jeff. Councillor Bradley, please.
Just one other thought. The other thing I would draw our attention to is chart 5 on page 12, which is talking about voluntary turnover. Now, if everybody was miserable, this would be a lot higher than it is. We've got a maximum here of around 1.4% of turnover, which seems extremely low to me for an organisation of this size, given the range of jobs that are involved in doing council work. So I think this is, it's creditable over the whole period of the chart, right from in 2022-23 and to now. Okay, the numbers move around, but actually, generally, it seems to me that people are leaving for the logical reasons that, they were moving, or in one case wanted a higher salary, and one case wanted a career break of the 6 people who responded. These are not unreasonable reasons, and actually this 1.4% maximum, and certainly at the moment the numbers are generally a little bit lower than that. So I think that's creditable. Thank you. I think it suggests that as a council as a whole, we're a good employer and people like working for us and don't particularly want to leave to go somewhere else unless they have to.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I think that's a very good point. That is a low level of turnover, which is excellent to see. Do we have any other questions at all? No? Okay. We're being asked to note this report, so can I take that as an agreement that we are able to note this report and move on? Super. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Joshua, for that. So moving to point number 6, so the equality, diversity, and inclusion in recruitment. Which officer's going to do that? Super. I'll hand over.
Hi, morning, Helen Cornwell, People and HR Service Manager. So I'm presenting this report, and I'm very pleased to be able to provide to Employment and Staffing Committee the data trends on equality, diversity, inclusion in recruitment. The data supports and highlights our commitment to fair and inclusive work practices, and as ever allows us to identify where further initiatives can be considered and developed. In the majority of areas, our statistics broadly align with the demographic of our local area, and we seek to challenge ourselves through our recommendations and future activities, and to work with relevant partners to promote and get support to reach those harder to reach groups in the community. So I'm asking the committee to note the report and recommendations for action.
Super. Thank you very much. Okay, so questions, can I hand over to Councillor Anna Bruggen, please?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask, I'm sure this is perfectly normal and there's a sensible way around, there's a sensible process that covers this, but at paragraph 4, we're reminded that we operate a blind recruitment process. So recruiting managers don't have access to personal details to ensure that there's no bias in the selection process. But I just wanted to check, at what stage do we do a check for things with the name, including things like DBS check, to make sure that these are not people who exhibit dangerous behaviours or whatever? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so the blind recruitment process is up until shortlisting. Obviously, at the point of inviting candidates to interview, they have to have a name because they would need to obviously contact them, but they don't still have access to their sort of personal ethnic data or diversity data in that respect. And then we only do DBS checks on the appointable candidates, and that's kind of a strict regulation on job role. So, but that gets done at that point, yeah, and obviously those checks are done.
And you're confident, I mean, obviously, if you then did a DBS check and found something that worried you, you would then withdraw the offer, or?
Yeah, if that was appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Super, thank you very much. Councillor Heather Williams, please.
Thank you. Just on that, I know there are a few areas where DBS checks are. I think my understanding is the majority of applicants, we don't do a sort of personal vetting or social media checks and things like that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so it's almost a buyer beware situation. I just wanted to focus on the recommendations on page 27. And one thing in the general, paragraph 34, first bullet point, it says a project has standardised all job descriptions. And I can understand the bit about being user-friendly, accessible, and avoiding jargon. That would be lovely. I think councillors would really appreciate if the jargon wasn't there. That would definitely help us get to who we want to get to. But in the past, one of the reasons it might not have been in this quarter, but previously, is about progression, and that people have left our authority because they want to progress their career, and there aren't those opportunities for them here. And I just wonder, when you say standardise, to me, that because it says standardise all job descriptions, does that mean that we're going to be putting more people under the same banner of a certain job description, or is it like just jargon and things like that? Because if we don't ensure that there are enough opportunities for people to progress their careers, we will then end up having that sort of issue where people leave because they want to become a senior. I'm going to say just planning because I've got a piece of casework on my mind. A senior planning officer, but actually the way we've standardised it, so we've just got a team leader and a normal officer. Do you know what I mean? We end up inadvertently taking out tiers of career progression.
Thank you. Helen, would you like to go back?
Yep. That's actually a really good question, and it's something that we're hoping the project will really help to resolve. So part of the project is obviously loading all of those job descriptions in, and actually we're hoping that it will create a really clear pathway so that people can see what is required of a planner, what is required of a senior planner, and they can look at those gaps, and we can support those with a development plan in order for those people to close those gaps and get that next job. So we're really hoping, so in terms of, we're not intending on taking out layers or changing those things. It's just to make them more standardised so that across the organisation it is clear for someone to see, oh, if I'm in this role and I want to do that role, what are the things that are the same and what are the things that are different that we can action a development plan.
Super, thank you.
Thank you. So it won't affect sort of the scales, pay scales and things like that. You'll still have that clear progression. That was my sort of concern about that. So thank you for your answer. And can I just say that it's great that we have the reporting, and it is necessary that we have the reporting, but I do long for a time when it's not necessary.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Richard Stobart isn't able to be with us today, and those of you attended the Employment and Staffing Committee know that Richard often has really interesting questions and comments to make. So I reached out to Richard, and he had just mentioned, and he would mention if it was here, when we're looking at recruitment, looking at those, spreading our net as wide as possible. I obviously realise everything's advertised on the website, but he was wondering, is there a possibility perhaps to sort of focus on some unemployment hotspots? Would that be an issue? But he also then points out that there may be an issue there because of the housing costs that we have in the area, and then that leads on to perhaps another thing to look at. But just wanted to have that noted if that could also be considered.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Alan Brudden, do you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. I just, a little query. I mean, this does not affect our data, but I just wondered, the table 1 on under paragraph, or in paragraph 14 on page 21, I'm just a bit puzzled why it's not, obviously this is taken from South Cambridgeshire as a whole, so we're comparing our data to what's in South Cambridgeshire. But I don't understand why they've done different numbers of years and then expressed it as a percentage. I can see it doesn't have to be the same number of group of years in every percentage, but it's sort of, you think, okay, so that's loads of people aged 35 to 49, you know, nearly a quarter of the people are aged 35 to 49. And then you realise that that's over 16 years, whereas the others are only over 4 years. So it's a bit weird. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what it's trying to tell us this is how many people of these ages there are in South Cambridgeshire, so this is the pool we're drawing from. But it seems to be a slightly strange way of, you'd think either they would use the same number of years and then the percentages could be compared, or they'd just express it as numbers or something. Anyway, it was just a bit confusing.
No, agreed. Thank you for making that comment, because it is, I think when I looked at it earlier, it did kind of like sort of skew maybe. Like, is there any thoughts on this, or have we pulled that table from somewhere else?
Yeah, just to note, it's externally sourced data, so obviously we can only use what's out there, but it was just really to give a kind of comparator against what's in our local area.
Great, okay.
And our graph on page, chart 2, and paragraph 10 on the other page, gives a more logical, well done, a more logical separation of the years, groups of years together. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions at all? No? Okay. So the committee is being asked to note the report. Are we okay to approve and note the report and move on?
Agreed.
Super, thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to the implementation of the 4-day week productivity policy. Who's presenting this today? Oh, sorry.
Happy for Jeff to
That's
introduce
me.
this.
I should be, yes,
Or
apologies.
Helen.
Okay.
So this is the proposed implementation for the council decision to implement the 4-day week. So this aligns much with the trial period, so there's not a lot of changes. This is just formalising for staff, and as part of the arrangement we will require staff to actively opt into this policy and the agreed principles that surround it. So yeah, we're asking members for their feedback on the policy for implementation.
Okay. Before we move on, I'd just like to point out to anybody in the room, and also people that might be watching online, it might be just helpful to understand that this isn't to decide whether we are adopting a 4-week or not. That has already been decided. Instead, this is about how the decision will be put into place and how operationally this will be applied. With that in mind, I think it's important to actually understand the scope of what we're being asked to do here, which is the operations of the four-day week policy. This is not the first time that members have also seen this policy. This has also been circulated before, so we are sort of discussing something that has already been circulated amongst members of this committee. I also need to invite Councillor John Williams to speak on this as well, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as you said, and the policy really speaks for itself, I think one point I would want to emphasise, though, is that this is a policy that staff have to opt into. So, you know, we are not imposing this on our colleagues. Our colleagues can make their own decision whether or not they wish to enter into this policy. But it does continue basically what we've been doing over the last 3 years. There are some small changes. For example, definition of a non-working day is now more defined as a scheduled rest day. But by and large, it is what we've been, what our staff have been working on, nearly all our staff, I think apart from maybe 4 staff. And it does formalise what we've been doing over the past 3 years. So it shouldn't make any difference to really in practice the way that the council works. Because as I say, we've been working this way over the last 3 years for desk-based staff, and just over 2 years for our waste staff. So I would ask obviously the committee to agree to this. I understand the trades unions have agreed to this as well. So this is a formality, but I do emphasise we are not imposing this on our staff. Our staff have to opt into this.
That's great, thank you. Okay, Councillor Alan Bradman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of questions, and I'll look to you to decide whether you want to take them one at a time.
We'll take them, yeah, if we can take them sort of.
So, the first thing is thank you for clarifying the name of the day, as it were. So I understand that the unions have been involved in the use of the word scheduled rest day rather than the previous terminology, which was the non-working day. And I think that's helpful because it I believe that makes a useful distinction in employment, as it were. So that's great. Then yes, small trivial question, but if this is going to be the policy that, with comment we might adopt, at 7.1 on overtime, I wondered whether the correct terminology, towards the end it says 37 hours for full-time, prorated for part-time. Shouldn't that be pro rata? I don't know if that's, because we're using Latin, aren't we? Yeah?
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yes, we're happy to make that change.
Thank you. I'm glad also, just above that, under the apprentices at 6.3, I'm glad to see that apprentices are being given the flexibility to complete their off-the-job learning during their scheduled rest days, if they choose to do so. I think that makes sense for somebody who's taking on a job newly at the beginning, and that's up to them. It's their choice, so that's good, and it's agreed between the apprentice and the line manager. So I was concerned about new staff coming in and maybe feeling a bit at sea, so that's good that they can do that there. The next thing I wanted to raise, and it might just be useful to clarify to me, not necessarily in the policy, but at 7.2 we're talking about colleagues may not claim time off in lieu, and if they do, it's agreed with the relevant head of service. but then it goes on to say, when opted into the productivity policy, colleagues may not use the flex time scheme. So I just wondered if we could just have an explanation of that, because as I understand it, toil is actually not the same as flex time, so perhaps you could clarify.
Yes, would you be able to clarify on that point?
I guess they're sort of HR technical terms in some respects. So the difference is the flexi-time scheme was part of our contractual obligations, where you could accrue hours if you worked additional and take them back at another time. And the flexi-time scheme won't operate under this policy. However, in certain circumstances, so that might be for people who work annualised hours, for example, in our water courses, where obviously the hours are more restricted in the darker nights, or for example, to undertake like the Christmas market and things like that, which is of benefit to our community, we need to be able to offer some recompense. So they would be for very specific circumstances where colleagues would be able to take their time back.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. And the final one is just a sort of observation about the numbering and the naming on page 7 of the policy, page 41 in the agenda, which is about section 8 refers to opting in to the productivity, which tells you how you do that. And then 9 is opting out. If you opted in and then decide you want to opt out, it explains how to do that, which is helpful. But then 10 is then called opting into the productivity policy again, which is confusing. And I think we need to find a different terminology there, perhaps operating within the productivity policy or operation of. Just to clarify, that's, these are the ways you go in and out of it, but if you're in it, this is how it works, would be helpful, I think.
Agreed, that could be complex. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I see exactly what you're saying. It's helpful. Those of us that have read the policy lots and lots of times can become a little bit word blind. So yes, we'll work with colleagues to find a more appropriate wording. Yes, opting in, opting out, opting back in again. Shake it all about.
Shake it all about. Yes, exactly. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Councillor Heather Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. So taking note of what you said earlier, I have a series of questions which I'd like clarified before I voice my opinion on the report. Do you want me to take them 2 by 2, 1 by 1?
If you could do 1 by 1 for a start. But yes, that would be great. Thanks.
So first of all, on page 37, on what's now been referred to as scheduled rest day, one of the things that was included as part of the sort of branding and promotion of the 4-day week was about people volunteering on their non-working day. That doesn't seem to be explicitly referred to, so I'm wondering if that's a change and people aren't allowed to volunteer on those days, or whether it comes into one of the other things, perhaps undertake development, I don't know. So that was my first question, was around, can people still volunteer?
Any thoughts?
Hi, yes, absolutely they can, and I'm happy to add that in as an example.
Thank you, because I just felt that it didn't fall into those categories. On the final page, on page 43, it refers to family leave policies, and it says about maternity, adoption leave, shared. One thing, in fact, my first ever motion here was about neonatal leave that officers worked on. So is that now covered by maternity and paternity, or is that a policy that's been missed off?
Yeah.
There were just some examples of some of our family leave policies. It's not an explicit list, but yes, it will be covered. I'm happy to add it in.
Okay, thank you. I do think it is because, or at least something that said this is not an exhaustive list, because I read it as if they're absent, and I read it as literally those things rather than examples. And that's something that I think is very important, that we keep that neonatal leave policy in place. I have a question around new starters. So they don't get a scheduled rest day for 6 weeks. Now there's been lots of news around employment rights changing for new starters and things like that. I'm just wondering how that fits in, because we surely have a responsibility to treat all members of staff the same, regardless of sort of length and tenure. So are we definite that we can treat one, new staff separately to others?
Yeah, we've taken advice.
Okay. So the other thing was on page 40. In part of 7.5, it says will be gifted the second bank holiday. Is that the same as what happened? I'm assuming that's only really Christmas and Easter, and that's the same as what has always happened, regardless of 4-day week.
Yeah, it is actually only Christmas, because that's the only one where two fall in 1 week. At Easter, you have one the week before and one the week after. So, but it is the same operation as has happened previously.
Lovely, thank you. On page 38, in the rescheduled rest day section, and I appreciate there are things without notice, that gives that 7 days. I did think 7 calendar days, so it's 5 working days equivalent. But it was the last or second to last paragraph where it says, if a colleague have been asked to work on their scheduled rest day for most of the day, sort of 50% or more, they may request to swap their scheduled rest day. What wasn't clear to me was, do they still have to then work that full day? Because otherwise, they get a 3.5 day.
Yeah, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, sorry. So the principle of this policy is to enable us to make sure that our operational requirements can be kept. So that's the reason this is in there. Predominantly over the course of the trial, colleagues haven't been asked to come in on their scheduled rest day. So we don't anticipate that that will happen in the future. And I think it will be managers' judgment depending. We can't put in every single thing that might happen within the policy, but fundamentally, if someone were to come in, it would be over the 50% of their day. We would anticipate they would continue their day and take an alternative day.
Okay, can we make that clearer, that if they work more than 50% of that day, they're expected to finish that day? Because this reads like, if you come in on a non-working day, you can have a 3.5 day week, which I think would really push some people's to the brink. The other is on page 37. This is my last question, then I'll give my view on the report, Chair. 37 on the third section, it says about the focus should be on delivery of their role rather than the hours worked. And later on it does say about, productivity, and it's called a productivity policy. We don't make widgets or manufacturing. We can't calculate, we have to do 100 a day and we've got 100 done or 120, whatever it is. So realistically, if we're focusing on delivery, how is that being measured? Because the KPIs, for example, they sometimes include third party, they sometimes include automation. It's not actually about the productivity of the officers. So I didn't feel for a productivity policy, other than that one sentence, which just tells people to focus on their delivery outcomes rather than hours, that there was anything about how productivity will be managed. So where does that fall in?
Could I just ask Councillor Williams to remind me which part of the policy you're looking at?
So page 37, on the third part, is about the productivity benefit. It explains that they're having 100% of their salary for 86.5% of their contracted hours, 100% of the salary, and the focus should be on delivery of their role rather than the hours worked. That's the section I'm looking at.
Thank you very much. I was just trying to
Which is, so we hear about the benefit of the productivity, but not really how that productivity will be measured.
So would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, so I think it will be through our existing performance management practices, and actually in some respects it's no different than when we were doing it over 5 days, that the manager's responsible for undertaking what are the requirements of the role and how that should be delivered. And actually, if someone was struggling with either high workload or not enough to do, previous to this, we would have done the same kind of practices. So through regular one-to-ones, through team meetings, and through performance management, and it will still be managed in the same effect. Obviously, we have very clear KPIs, which if your role is responsible for contributing to one of those, it can help the performance management by having that data to back that up.
I think I'm ready to give my opinion on the report, if you're ready for that, Chair.
Yes, you can have. Yes, you can give an opinion. Well, it's obviously a policy, but yes.
Yes, but we have the report in front of us, and the recommendation of the report. So I don't believe that this policy as drafted is a productivity policy. I think it sets out the terms of the offering of a scheduled rest day, and would probably be more appropriate to have a non-working day policy or a scheduled rest day. And the reason I say that is because of this measurement of productivity. It again refers to 100% of the pay for 100% of the work. But when you're outside of manufacturing and you're in a service, the reality is that cannot be measured. The productivity cannot be measured. You can have targets, you can have internal, external targets, but they can be met by having the introduction of AI. They can be met through process changes. It's not about the work, and it's not this policy to me no longer says what we've been told for years now of 100% of the work in 80% or 83.5% of the time. And I use some examples in the fact that the council just doesn't work in that way. If you are working in the call centre, you can't do 5 days worth of work in 4, because all you can do is answer the calls that come in. They still have to be done on another day. Officers will only have the capacity to do what they can in 4 days in many other areas of the council as well, which is why we see the waste crews, and we had to increase to 32, that we've got additional waste crews, because it cannot be done. And I think that this productivity policy is actually, I want to make it very clear, this is not down to the authors of the policy. They've been asked to do the impossible, in my view. We either have to admit as a council, productivity cannot be managed in days, we cannot be done, and we, as a council, have said, yes, you can get 100% of your pay for 83.5% of your work. There is nothing in here that guarantees 100% of work gets done in a shorter time, and the reason is it's impossible. So I'm not happy with this policy. I do not think it is a safeguard, and the whole intention of this was a safeguard against productivity, and yet nothing at all in here refers to how productivity will be measured and will be implemented other than what was already going on. So I think we can sign this off today and say we've got a safeguard in place, but it would just be worthless words. That is my view, and I won't be supporting it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Can I call on the lead member, Councillor John Williams, to?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just correct Councillor Williams on one thing? It's 86.5%, not 83%. Okay. There are two aspects to this. First of all, there's the overall productivity of the council, which we measure for our KPIs every quarter, which is set for us by the council's budget, which is determined by the corporate plan of this council. So there is that aspect of productivity. And to my mind, it's quite clear that since we introduced a 3-day week, 4-day week, avoiding sort there. Since we introduced a 4-day week, productivity of the council has improved in terms of our finances, in terms of delivery of our services, and that's shown for our KPIs. The second part of this is obviously the individual colleagues' input into that productivity change. And that's dealt with through the management of that person, through the, through the performance management that we have in place in this council, which we've always had in place in this council when those colleagues work 5 days a week. And that hasn't changed. And it's interesting that I don't remember Councillor Williams, when we were working a 5-day week, criticising the way that we managed our staff then. But there's no difference. That has not changed. The person is managed, their performance is managed against the roles and responsibilities that they have in that post. And that hasn't changed. And so, this is a productivity paper because it deals with both those aspects. The aspect of the overall productivity of the council, which is definitely improved. You can see that for all the indicators, including the financial indicators. And secondly, the way in which we manage our colleagues and their productivity as a result of that. And that has not changed. That process has not changed. So, I'm sorry, but, as far as I'm concerned, this is about productivity of the council, and I would ask members of this committee to support the policy.
Thank you, Councillor John Williams. We've just got a couple of questions around the room, so I'll do that and circle back. Oh, okay, yes. Yeah,
so the lead member referred to not hearing. He might not have heard me, but I raised actually during COVID, before the 4-day week, about how we monitor and manage staff performance in relation to hybrid working. So it is not accurate to say that I've only had concerns since. We did have concerns before, because when you have got people working remotely, it's also very difficult for managers to bring into place reasonable things. And actually, one thing I didn't reference, but I was triggered by the comments of the lead member and what he said. This is so open to abuse by my managers. This is a carrot being dangling along, and that in here there aren't many safeguards if you have a dispute with your manager and they then threaten to take away your policy. That's something that wasn't in place before. So actually, you've just created a loophole for a manager to have even more influence over the working habits of, and so it's not even safe for most junior members of staff anymore.
thank you, Councillor Williams. Yeah.
I have to come back on this because the implication there is that our staff cannot be trusted. And I think our staff are owed an apology by the Leader of the Opposition.
So I will not apologise for me saying that a policy could be used for abuse. I have not referred to any member of staff. However, I am aware of cases, and that's partly when we looked at the anti-bullying situation, and we had a focus group and a task and finish group on it, which I chaired, that there, like any organisation, there will always be a situation where some members of staff, the person we were looking at, no longer works here, granted, but if this had been in their hands, the situation could have been even worse for that member of staff that was being bullied by a senior manager. We are not here to make the assessment of what is going on. We're here to look at a policy and say, can it be open to abuse? And I very much definitely think it can be. That is my opinion, and I don't apologise for wanting to safeguard officers.
Thank you. Let's move on to other questions at this point. Councillor Anna Bradman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a little bit of sympathy with the nomenclature of this policy. I just sort of was ruminating because it implies, we know that before this 4-day week proposal and trial came in, we know that our staff were working extremely efficiently. And all through COVID and through Council Anywhere, we do put an enormous amount of trust in our staff, and they have been paying us back, evidenced by our KPIs, which show that our productivity hasn't fallen. So it's almost as if this policy will retain that productivity, whereas actually it is already being retained by the quality of working of our staff. And so I did wonder whether we could consider, this is not wildly contentious, but the 4-day week working policy might perhaps be more acceptable. I don't know, just a thought. But basically, I think this is a good thing. The only thing is, I think for anybody who just wanted to check how much leave they had, it's quite complicated. And but I understand that anybody could go to HR and check, or indeed their working recording system would give them the amount of days leave that they were due to have. So I have no hesitation in proposing this policy.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sally-Ann Hart.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss this policy. Like Councillor Bradnam, I like looking at the bit that comes before the productivity policy terminology. It's really, we need a policy to enable staff to either opt in or opt out of the 4-day week. I commend really this council on its flexibility to staff, and that's how we are attracting more people to come and work here. We see people as human beings, and we respect their ability to make their own decisions, plus providing the support around them when it's needed. And it must have been a really tricky document to produce, bearing in mind the number of staff we have and the number of different roles that there are. So thank you, and for putting something down on paper that we can discuss. And I like all policies, I guess, there will be a time for it to be reviewed. So there will be things that could come up that might show actually we've missed something here. I will be supporting the implementation of this policy. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and echo some of those thoughts as well. Yeah, thank you very much for all the hard work that's gone into that, because I think it has shown. Just coming back to Councillor Anna Brandon's point as well, I am mindful of the title of this policy, so I don't know if it's actually something we can look at, or maybe after this has been to a vote or something, but something we can actually look at as maybe a working change to the title.
Absolutely, we're perfectly happy to look at an alternative wording. We'll perhaps have a competition to see if staff can come up with an appropriate title.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Can I just raise a procedural issue? I do think that it is the wrong name for this policy. I'm in agreement with that. But council voted subject to a productivity policy. So just a reminder, I don't think I do think it needs to be changed, but that will need to be brought back to full council for the change. I wouldn't like us to slip down a constitutional issue there. It very much, it's not a productivity policy. It is a opt-in, how you opt in or out of the 4-day week.
Thanks for that clarification. Yes, Councillor Branham.
And the other one was, we suggested a change in the name of item 10, which was operation of the productivity policy.
We did, thank you. Okay, so do we have a proposer? I think you've mentioned that already. So
I proposed it, Chair.
Great, thank you. A seconder? Yes, Councillor John Williams. Great, thank you. Okay, if we've come to this point, then we can actually go to a vote, if we're able to get that set up, please. I think somebody might be short of a vote. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. We've got 83% yes. So that has been approved. Okay, that's the last item on the agenda. Thank you very much, everybody. So this meeting is now brought to a close. The next meeting is on the 6th of November, 2025, at 10 a.m. And I look forward to all seeing you then. And it'll be a lot cooler than it is now, I've no doubt.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.